this year shaping up to be even bigger.
Absolutely. We're looking at even more launches of Starship this year with tons of exciting firsts starting today. Flight 7 has a lot in store, from Starship's next generation upper stage design on its first flight today to deploying the first simulated Starlink satellites and the second booster catch attempt. We're kicking off 2025 in style here in the Lone Star State. So hold on to your butts because it's going to be a wild year.
And it's all ramping up as we chase after that full reusability for the world's biggest rocket. And we're going to be with you today every step of the way. Also joining us, though, amid a very excited crowd growing over there in Hawthorne, is Jesse Anderson. Jesse, how's everything going in LA?
Hey, Dan and Kate, everything is all good here on the factory floor. We're just outside of Mission Control, and we're T-minus 31 minutes away, but we already have a really big crowd here building. There you go. Starting to build up here. Every flight of Starship has made huge progress, and today is another exciting one. We're joined by Starship, Raptor, and Starlink teams here with me today, and everyone is getting super excited for this flight test. So with that in mind, I expect it to get very loud in here soon. But for now, I'm going to hand it back over to you guys at Starbase for a quick look back at the flights that brought us here today.
Hey, thanks, Jesse. Now, the more we fly safely, the faster we learn, the sooner we realize full and rapid reuse. The previous 6 flight tests proved we're on the right track. Each one of those tests provides a ton of invaluable data and, of course, some pretty great views along the way.
Oh, yeah. Every one of those tests informed the upgrades that are debuting on today's flight test. And you know, we've all been watching this, following through the incredible testing campaign for every flight. And man, I can't wait for today as well as everything else we've got planned this year.
Just a recap of what happened just before this flight test. Our most recent one was back in November 19th. That was Flight 6. It lifted off at 4 p.m. Central from Starbase, Texas, just a couple miles over our shoulders.
It was a gorgeous sunset ascent. Let's take a look.
Attention all flight crew members, flight is go for launch.
It's been just over a month since Flight 5. Goal is to get that turnaround time down to hours.
We have liftoff. Stage separation.
30 seconds, no catch decision.
Booster offshore diverge.
Tune in and watch the ship fly around planet Earth.
Relight demo startup. And shutdown.
Starship is at 100 kilometers altitude. Flaps now have control of the vehicle. Starship has started the subsonic belly flop. Starship has landed.
All right, now today's flight test is going to look pretty similar profile-wise to that last one and honestly the last couple. So everything starts off, as always, with liftoff. The Super Heavy igniting those 33 Raptor engines. Super Heavy going to power us through that initial ascent, get Starship on its way to space before we get to the hot stage maneuver.
Exactly. The ship will then ignite engines while it's still attached to the booster. That will allow us to separate the 2 stages. That booster will leave a few engines on for that flip and return back here to Starbase for a catch at the launch tower.
And while booster catch is blowing our minds, ship keeps going all the way to space, gets into its suborbital trajectory. Got a couple on-orbit things. We're going to deploy our first test satellite satellites, also going to relight a Raptor engine while in space. That all sets us up then for re-entry.
As we have seen on the previous flights, courtesy of Starlink, that re-entry period gives us such gorgeous views. It's like, just a rainbow flow of colors as the ship re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. The ship will relight its engines, perform a flip maneuver for a soft water landing in our targeted location in the Indian Ocean. And that will once again be daylight given our later launch window. So today's flight test will be launching the next generation of Starship. It'll attempt the first payload deployment test, fly multiple re-entry experiments geared toward ship catch and reuse, and of course, the launch and return of the Super Heavy booster back to the launch site right there behind us.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing, but ship, kind of the star of the show for a lot of stuff today. A huge block of upgrades to Starship's upper stage are debuting on this flight test, adding more capability. We'll start off up top. Those forward flaps got a redesign. They shrunk in size. We shifted them towards the top of the vehicle, away from the heat shield. That's going to make it significantly less exposed to re-entry heating. And then Starship itself, we made it about 2 meters taller. So we stretched it up to about 52 meters. That allowed us to add 25% more propellant volume, along with a bunch of propulsion upgrades like vacuum jacketing of those feed lines to the engines, an entirely new feed line system for the Raptor vacuum engines, an improved avionics module for propulsion, all that adding performance and the ability to fly longer missions.
And just like on Flight 6, tiles have been purposely removed to stress test vulnerable areas. This time we're doing it across the entire vehicle, including in critical areas, as we use this flight to push the boundaries of Starship's capabilities. And for re-entry experiments, multiple metallic tiles are being tested, as you can see there on your screen, including some that have a version with active cooling.
Then the vehicle's avionics, its brains, got a complete redesign. Some of the new things, we've got 4 of these upgraded Starlink terminals that combine Starlink, global navigation, and RF communications into a single unit. And then on the sides of the vehicle, we have these catch fittings. They're non-structural, but we're going to be able to see how they perform thermally during re-entry. We also smoothed part of that tile line to address some hot spots that we saw during entry on the last flight.
Now the ship and the booster, they weren't the only thing to get some upgrades. On the ground side, several radar sensors will be tested on the tower catch arms as we experiment with additional ways to measure distance between the arms and the vehicle while we prepare for ship catch. Now this is just a handful of the many upgrades included on this flight that make this the most capable Starship that we've flown so far.
And then something really cool has me super excited. We're going to be deploying 10 Starlink simulators that are similar in size to our next generation Starlink satellites. With pretty unparalleled payload capacity and full reusability, Starship's going to be able to deploy our more advanced V3 Starlink satellites, which is going to help us continue to revolutionize global connectivity. Each of those Starlink V3 launches on Starship is going to add about 60 terabits per second of capacity to the Starlink network. And that alone is that's more than 20 times the capacity we're getting with every V2 Mini flight on a Falcon 9 right now. That just helps further Starlink's impact in the coming years as we expand access to high-speed internet all around the world and eventually beyond. And those Starlink simulators are going to be on the same suborbital trajectory as Starship, and they're expected to demise upon entry. Starship itself, its trajectory looks very similar to all of our last several flights, suborbital, splashdown targeted into the Indian Ocean, a couple hundred miles off the western coast of Australia. And then the other on-orbit thing we're doing is going to be relighting a single Raptor engine while in space. We knocked that out last time. V2 ship, new propellant system. Let's do it again on this one.
Ship's going to be busy. Now, of course, we can't forget to add that today's Super Heavy booster is reflying flight-proven hardware for the first time. A Raptor engine that flew on the booster that was caught during Starship's 5th flight test. You can see it there on your screen. This flight-proven engine, we've got Raptor 314 there, hence why there's a piece of pie on this nozzle. Maybe we can get that image rotated so you can see it a little bit better. Yeah, There we go. If you didn't already know, we like our jokes around here. So that's what we have planned for today's flight test. And so far, everything is on track as we continue to count down. We're now within 23 minutes of launch. We're at 22 minutes and 52 seconds. Everything continues to look good. Still a little breezy, but that's okay for us.
Yeah, we set up our desk in a wind tunnel today. It's probably windier here than it is anywhere else, but weather's cooperating, really clear skies, no rain today, still well within our limits for booster launch or catch. Not tracking any issues on vehicle as we continue to count down. We're still loading prop on board. Our range team also reporting that the range looks like it will be clear at our current T0. So that's super important. We're going to keep an eye on that all the way up to the end.
As for what we've already done with the vehicle leading up to today, we stacked the vehicle over the weekend. We lifted the ship on top of the super heavy booster. Hours ago, we cleared the site of all personnel. And of course, our flight controllers came on console, some of them sitting in the building behind Dan and I. And as Dan mentioned, the range team was deployed. They are standing by in the Gulf to make sure that the booster has a clear to return back to here at the launch tower, but also they're located in the Indian Ocean, standing by to make sure that the targeted landing zone for the ship is also clear as well.
And then we knock out a whole bunch of things in the hours before launch. We do an alignment on all the guidance, navigation, and control. We did tank purges, pressure checkouts, make sure we were ready for prop load, check the booster, quick disconnects, and the ship one. We demate the chopsticks. We actually do a little wiggle check on them, make sure we have control, as we're going to be using those for catch. Load up all of the hydraulics that are on the tower, and then we did the initial locks and methane chills, getting them ready for prop load.
Now, speaking of prop load, we conducted the go, no-go poll for prop load at 3:30, so a little bit less than an hour ago. All was good there. Prop load is underway. The LOX load on the booster started at T-minus 45 minutes, and fuel started at T-minus 43 minutes. Booster fuel will start at T-minus 41 minutes, and then LOX on the booster started at T-minus 35. So that will all wrap up at T-minus 3 minutes and 20 minutes on the ship side, and at T-minus 2 minutes and 50 seconds on the booster side. So everything is looking good. Propellant is loading.
Yeah, looks like we're about half full of everything on booster, 3/4 of the way there on ship, looking good for a launch today. With that, though, let's jump over. Let's check back in with Jesse real quick and all of our teams out at Hawthorne.
Thanks, Dan and Kate, and great to hear the updates with the vehicle as we prepare for liftoff. There is a lot more people here, as expected. Love it. All the Raptor engines are built here, so there's a lot of that team here in the crowd, so they have a strong connection to the Starship flight today. Every flight test gets us closer to a fully operational Starship, which gets us closer to our ultimate goal to make humanity a multi-planetary species. To establish cities on Mars, we're going to need high-cadence, low-cost flights for cargo and crew. As the only fully reusable rocket with this kind of capability, Starship is the only vehicle in development that will be able to unlock our multi-planet future. Starship uses a first-of-its-kind on-orbit propellant transfer to refuel in orbit in preparation for these long trips. With milestones like ship catch and in-orbit prop transfer coming up, 2025 promises to be huge for Starship and our journey to Mars, with our first trip currently planned for the end of 2026. Between the reusability, low cost, and heavy lift capabilities, this all comes together to help us deliver up to 100 people at a time to destinations both near and far, and to deliver payloads farther and at a lower cost than any other vehicle. We'll be able to launch more massive payloads than anything else flying or in development today, capable of sending things like giant space telescopes or the next generations of space stations into orbit on a single launch. So while today's flight is just a test, the future is much closer than we realize. But one flight test at a time. So let's head back to Dan and Kate for a closer look at Starship.
Thanks, Jesse. Starship features two major parts: the ship, which has 6 Raptor engines, and the Super Heavy booster, which has 33 Raptor engines. The Raptor engine is a reusable methane-oxygen staged combustion engine that powers the Starship system and has twice the thrust of the Falcon 9 Merlin engine. Now, just like we saw flights 1 through 6, the current iteration of Starship is an experimental vehicle flying for development. As we mentioned earlier, today's flight is debuting a ton of upgrades that we've had in the works in order to increase Starship's reliability and performance. Several of these upgrades will also unlock our ability to fly longer missions, something that we'll want to do as we start doing orbital flights around Earth.
And then to get an even better sense of just how big Starship is, we can start here. Let's take a person about 2 meters tall. Towering over that, you got your Millennium Falcon clocking in at 35. Just above that, we've got a Falcon 9 rocket, payload fairing attached. Double that height, you're up at 70 meters. And then topping it all off, nearly twice the size, it's a fully stacked Starship up to 123, got 2 meters taller. Altogether, the ship, 52 meters, Super Heavy boosters, 71. And what's super fun is we're going to make ship and booster even taller in the future.
Which is crazy, because turning around and looking at it and thinking that it's going to be bigger, that's mind-blowing.
Make the ship as tall as the booster.
Now, moving up the rocket, the ship features 6 Raptor engines. 3 optimized for sea level performance and 3 optimized for vacuum performance. Raptor Vacuum, or RVAC, is a similar design to the Raptor engine, but features a larger exhaust section and a larger expansion nozzle to maximize the engine's efficiency in space. Our upgraded ship that we're debuting today carries about 300 more tons of propellant than the last flight's ship, bumping it up from 1,200 metric tons to about 1,500 metric tons. It's a lot. The ship is designed for vertical takeoff and landing on any hard surface. Now, the ship is also outfitted with newly redesigned forward flaps that are used to aerodynamically control the vehicle's attitude during atmospheric flight and enable a precision landing. The new flaps are lighter and positioned more leeward or away from the heat shield.
Now, to reach full reusability, the ship has to be able to survive re-entry not just one time, but multiple times. The ship's heat shield is essentially what does the job for that. We've been iterating on that every single flight, building towards that heat shield that requires no refurbishment between flights. Now, the heat shield is composed of thousands of hexagonal ceramic tiles. They're designed to insulate the vehicle during that atmospheric entry where temperatures ramp up to as high as about 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. A rapidly reusable heat shield has never been flown in history, so continuously improving this, flying new experiments, those are all key focuses of all of our flight tests right now.
And in between the first and second stages is our hot stage, which we saw in actions on flights 2 through 6. The hot staging maneuver is when the upper stage engines are ignited before the booster engines, before those booster engines are completely cut off. With hot staging, the rocket never stops accelerating during separation, so it's more efficient than traditional stage separation. One of the hallmarks of Starship flights are the incredible views that we get throughout flight, of course, courtesy of Starlink. Every day, we're working to expand the Starlink network both on Earth and in space. Here's Jesse with more.
Fans of Starship may know that Starlink enables us to bring you lots of unprecedented views, both from space and here on Earth. In addition to the dozens of cameras on Starship itself, we also have mobile Starlink camera kits deployed in the Indian Ocean, connected to our aerial assets and all around Starbase, which all come together to help tell the incredible story of Starship, both on and off planet. Thanks to Starlink, Starship is capable of streaming more than 120 megabits of real-time, high-definition video and telemetry in every phase of flight, providing invaluable engineering data to help engineers rapidly iterate across all systems. And all of that streaming data will be put to good use with the more than 30 cameras on the vehicle for today's flight test. Starlink is the world's largest satellite constellation, operating in low Earth orbit to deliver high-speed, low-latency broadband internet, providing access to people around the world, many who have never had connectivity before. Starlink now serves more than 119 countries, territories, and other markets. And here at SpaceX, we've been developing Starlink's communication capabilities not just for humans on Earth, but for astronauts in space. Our recent Polaris Dawn mission, we deployed a high-speed internet connection in Dragon for the very first time. Here's a quick look at how that went.
Starlink is an amazing confluence of programs at SpaceX. So we have a whole corner of the company that owns and operates a multiple thousand satellite constellation to provide internet to people on Earth. So Dragon was modified for Polaris Dawn to have a laser and a Star Trekker inside of the trunk. And then it will obtain internet, both uplink and downlink, through that laser link. And it's connected to a Wi-Fi router, just like you would have in your house.
Getting online with Starlink was super easy.
It was just like getting online at home, and even easier, perhaps. It just connected automatically and then worked seamlessly.
And then it was just internet in space.
The Starlink performance on orbit blew us away. It enabled us to talk directly with Mission Control team, and it also enabled us two-way video connection with our families back at home. So it just was an incredible resource.
One of my favorite memories is, all four of us in different parts of the spacecraft on phones with our earpieces talking to our families. Get to show them the perspective that we have of Earth. It was very cool to bring them into the mission that way.
I was able to show my kids and my husband, what it looked like to be floating in space. I got to show them out the window. Well, my husband even exclaimed that at one point we hung up the call and he called back and I answered and he was like, I called space.
Starlink on Dragon is something that we want to include because we have this company within SpaceX that has space-based internet. So what not a better way to test space-based internet in space?
From connecting astronauts in space to providing high-speed internet to more than 4.6 million active customers here on Earth, the Starlink team is laser-focused on expanding coverage, increasing speeds, and lowering latency so that we can connect as many as possible around the world and beyond. Last year, we activated Starlink in 27 new markets and are now covering a global area home to 2.8 billion people, including those who live in some of the most remote places on Earth. To meet the growing global demand for high-speed internet, SpaceX opened a new 700,000 square foot factory in Bastrop, Texas, and introduced Starlink Mini as well as an upgraded version of the Starlink Standard Kit. The SpaceX team also achieved an unprecedented launch cadence, conducting 134 Falcon launches, with 89 dedicated to expanding the Starlink constellation. With each launch, Starlink adds more capacity to the constellation and continues to expand its coverage, connecting even more people in underserved and hardest to reach areas of the globe. Now, while our mission to connect the unconnected is far from complete, you can check out some of the Starlink team's highlights from 2024 and learn more about how our customers are furthering Starlink's impact around the world at starlink.com/stories. And a little bit closer to home, we do have a few updates for those impacted by the fires here in Southern California. So far, the Starlink team has provided about 1,350 free kits to fire departments and other disaster response organizations from down in Orange County all the way up to Malibu. That is in addition to applying free Starlink service for thousands of customers impacted by the fires all across the Los Angeles area. And just as critically, since enabling our direct-to-cell satellites with T-Mobile, more than 120,000 text messages have been sent, allowing those in impacted areas to reach loved ones, text 911, or receive emergency alerts. I've never been prouder to be an employee at SpaceX for moments like that where we can help the people and community around us. Make sure to follow at Starlink on X for updates as we continue to work with local response teams, and check out starlink.com/LA wildfires for more information on these efforts. But back to today's flight test. One of our objectives is to return the booster to the launch site where it will be caught by the tower as we did on Flight Test 5. So let's head back to Dan and Kate for a catch primer.
Thanks, Jesse. We are now T-minus 8 minutes and 40 seconds until liftoff. Flight controllers on console there in the building just behind Dan and I. You can actually see the rocket in the distance at the pad 6 miles away. Our excitement is growing. I already am not sure if I'm going to be able to remain coherent after witnessing this, so looking forward to it.
You'll be all right. You'll be all right. Just a quick status check. The ship fully loaded in its main tanks on LOX and fuel. We're going to load the header tanks, and booster is going to be closing out real soon as well. Let's talk about that second catch attempt, though. So we're going to use the tower's 2 gigantic robotic arms, call them the chopsticks, same thing we used to stack Starship onto Super Heavy for all the integration ahead of a flight, and that's what we used to catch by moving stuff like landing legs from the booster to the ground side. It's a lighter booster, means you can carry more into space.
Now, in a nominal operational scenario following liftoff and after the 2 stages separate in flight, Super Heavy will return to the launch site, reignite its engines to slow the vehicle down, and the tower's arms will catch the rocket booster.
And just to get to this point, just like before, thousands of distinct vehicle pad criteria have to be met prior to that return and catch. We need healthy systems on the booster, healthy systems on the tower, and a manual command from our mission flight director for the day. If we don't send that command before the boost back burn ends, or if any of those automated checks kick us out, that's what happened on Flight 6, the Super Heavy booster will divert to an offshore trajectory, and it'll go out into a landing burn and a soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
Now, we have said it before, but it remains true today. We accept no compromises when it comes to ensuring the safety of the public and our team, and that return will only take place if the conditions are right.
And one of the unique aspects of Starship flights is the return and the catch of that Super Heavy booster and the audible sonic boom that it comes with it in the area around the return location. General impact to anyone in the area is just a brief thunder-like noise, but it definitely lets you know it's coming.
Oh, yeah. It's something our neighbors in Cape Canaveral, Florida and Vandenberg, California have become accustomed to over the years, and now we're bringing the boom to Boca. So here's a peek of what to expect.
As I mentioned earlier, we have Starship, Raptor, and Starlink employees here fully invested in this flight test. And of course, many other SpaceX employees also here across our sites supporting their teams, their teammates. Every flight test has been pretty unique, and we're all very excited for another round of firsts, but I'm pretty sure the crowd is looking forward to potentially watching those chopsticks catch another booster. So let's see how excited they are today. Just under 5 minutes to go. We are all very excited here. We're going to send it back to you at Starbase for the final minutes of the countdown. Kate and Dan.
All right, thank you, Jesse. So if you just tuned in under 5 minutes ago, you picked the right time to do it. Just a quick status check. So we're almost fully loaded on the booster. We'll be fully loaded on the ship, fully loaded on the booster coming up soon. Our range team just reported that we're looking go in the range. That's super important.
Great
Our
news.
security guys, Mike, Kyle, Nick, the whole team out there in the elements, making sure everything's clear, doing a fantastic job. And we are coming up on 4 minutes and looking good for launch.
Yeah, certainly exciting. Now, we do have an opportunity to hold at T-minus 40 seconds if necessary. This is a chance for us to perform additional checks if necessary. If we, need to repressurize some tanks, or if there's a wayward vessel in the range last minute, opportunity to clear it out. But everything currently looking good. Now, once we pass T-minus 40 seconds, a number of events will occur in rapid succession. The ground spin and ignition systems come up to flight pressure. The ship will go to internal power. After that, the quick disconnect, or QD arm lockout, is removed in preparation for retraction, which will happen shortly after T0. And yeah, once we pass T-minus 40 seconds, we do have the ability to recycle the count under certain conditions back to that T-minus 40 second mark and hold there to assess what happened and assess opportunity to proceed again to T0.
Yep, we've used that T-minus 40 hold a couple of times. Boat's usually one of the items, but we aren't tracking anything right now that would cause us to hold there. We can hold there for several minutes. Main thing you're watching at is you kind of set a clocks because your temperatures will change and the fuel and the locks, everything pretty quickly. So you've got a couple of minutes that you can hang out and figure things out. There are items that if we pass them, we're scrubbed for the day. One of the main ones is that flame deflector at the bottom of the launch mount. Water begins flowing for that at the T-minus 10 second mark. If we scrub at any point after that, we'll be done for the day. And then teams will need to refill the deflector as well as all of our prop that we use to load on board the vehicle. It's pretty much just under 11 million pounds of prop sitting on that thing right now. And we can actually recycle in about 24 hours now.
Which is incredible given the sheer volume of propellant that is on board the vehicle there on your screen.
All right, coming up on the 2-minute mark. Again, a lot of ambitious things on the plate for Starship today.
T-minus 2 minutes.
New ship, new year, a lot of upgrades, doing a lot of ambitious things in space this time. Our first payload deploy, relighting a Raptor engine. We're looking good.
So as we mentioned before, we have an opportunity to hold at T-minus 40 seconds, not tracking any issues at the moment that would be necessary right now. So fingers crossed we can pass through that checkpoint without stopping. But the folks on console are continuing to evaluate the launch commit criteria, making sure that the winds are within limits as well as any other weather restrictions. But man, compared to yesterday, this is a textbook gorgeous day.
Oh yeah, little breezy today, but we got clear blue skies for a launch today. So at this point, all the prop has been loaded on the vehicle. We've closed everything out. We're doing our final thrust vector control, or steering for the engine checkouts. Once we hit the 30-second mark, we'll hear the flight director give the final go for launch. So we're under a minute. As we said, we're not expecting a hold at T-minus 40. But do not be shocked if that happens. It has happened in the past, and we can hang out there for a couple of minutes if we need to.
If memory serves me right,
we hold my breath for 4 seconds.
Pass through prop load gate.
All right, we pass right through that prop load gate.
Hot diggity dog.
All right, so we're going to let our flight director, Ty Huntington, take it away.
Go for launch.
And 20 seconds.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff.
Vehicle's pitching downrange.
Booster check pressure is nominal.
All right, we're more than 30 seconds into flight. Telemetry showing 33 out of 33 engines as it's pitching downrange.
Booster and ship, avionics, power, and telemetry nominal.
Hearing good call-outs on the ship and booster avionics. You just heard the rumble hitting us about 6 miles away. Watching Starship arc into just endless blue skies right now.
Vehicle supersonic.
More than a minute into flight, the vehicle's supersonic.
Max Q.
So we just passed through max Q. That's the greatest stress the vehicle's going to experience on the way uphill. Reminder that all of our teams down here on the ground are now looking at systems on the tower. They just did a manual check through. That's going to inform that manual flight director's decision. Next moment coming up, though, is going to be hot staging. Don't take your eyes off it. It's one heck of a light show.
What a gorgeous ascent.
6 ship engines getting ready to ignite. That's going to happen while we're still attached.
We can still see the ship's engines from the ground.
Got a little under 30 seconds away from that. We are hearing good call outs on the tower preparedness from the manual checks. Reminder though, we've still got automated checkouts on the booster and the ship itself. But as of right now, our manual checks and our manual commanding is looking go for a catch.
Booster engine cut off.
That is incredible news. We just heard the call out for booster
right,
engine
Miko.
cut off.
Engine startup.
Most engines cut off, down to those
Stage
middle
separation.
3.
Cruise backburn startup.
All right, hot stage
Ship chamber
confirmed.
pressure
We've
is
got a
nominal.
booster hopefully on our way back to us, and a ship now making its ascent burn into space. How's it going in Hawthorne, Jesse?
It's great over here. You can hear the crowd screaming for every milestone. The booster is now making its way back down to Earth. Looks like we have 12 of those 13 engines ignited. We're using the engines that actually gimbal.
We
So
are go for booster return.
an excellent call out there. We are go for booster
Ship
return.
avionics, power and telemetry nominal.
There's a lot of criteria that needed to line up to ensure that we could have a
Cruise
safe
backburn shutdown.
booster catch, and it sounds like we got the go for that. And there you can see on your screen, we had we just jettisoned the hot stage, and there's a great, excellent view there of the hot stage floating away from the super heavy booster. Now we've shut down the engines for that boost back burn. That confirms boost back burn is now complete. That was the first of 2 burns required for the vehicle to make its way back down to Earth. And next coming up will be the landing burn. That's going to be 13 of those center engines igniting again. And that will then go down from 13 down to 3 engines just right before we touch down for that booster catch. Now, reminder, our stage 1 objectives are to have a controlled ascent, stage separation, as well as a controlled boost back burn and hot stage as well. So we're looking good for that so far. Some great views there from the ship of Earth. That looks incredible. Now, Starship's ship is still firing its engines right now.
Starship trajectory nominal.
And great call outs. Starship trajectory is nominal. You can follow along the telemetry, the altitude in the bottom left-hand corner for the super heavy booster, as well as the bottom right-hand corner for the ship. And these views are just amazing. Again, the booster is currently making its way back to the tower today. So we're looking forward to a booster catch with the chopsticks. And in the meantime, you can see those grid fins there, helping to control the vehicle and guide it back to its landing site.
Booster FTS is saved.
Now with that, we're going to hand it back. How's it going over there, Dan and Kate? How are you doing, Kate, seeing that in person?
Dan had to take that entire segment because I couldn't talk. That was incredible.
There it is.
We can see the booster coming back in now through the plume. At least it looks that way to us. It's incredible that it basically returns. It looks like a speeding, just like this silver flare coming back to the. Once again, we are standing by for attempting to catch the booster at the tower. This would be the second tower catch.
Booster
landing burn. Seeing 13 engines.
Booster now hovering as it aligns with the tower for catch.
Booster coming in. Get ready for that boom, Kate.
Down to 3 engines.
Booster landing burn shutdown. Megazilla has caught the booster.
You heard it here. Megazilla has caught the booster.
Once again, for the second time, a successful catch by the launch tower. This is the same tower, the launch pad, where that booster took off from just 7.5 minutes ago. Great view from the chopstick arms, looking at those hypersonic grid fins that steer the booster for that precision landing. It almost looks like it's flapping its wings.
Yeah, you can see just how small that catch fitting is, too, on something that's just so massive.
That was absolutely insane.
Meanwhile,
we're not done, but wait, there's more. Wow, that is just absolutely stunning. And this, of course, a gorgeous view there from the tower looking down at the top of the booster.
All right, and we are tracking.
Now we're standing by for views from the ship, but who can take their eyes off of that incredible sight? That is once again the second catch of a booster back at the launch tower. It was incredible to see it come back down, just this silver flare in the sky. And we can still see the launch plume behind us, and wow, that we definitely I can't speak for you, Dan, but that was very moving for me.
Yeah, and right now you can see some of the telemetry on those ship engines has gone out, and we're waiting for an update on what our ship status is. We were approaching that ship engine cutoff time, so just waiting to hear. So obviously we've got booster back, booster on the launch tower in the chopstick arms, but we are waiting to get an update now on the ship. As we were expecting ship engine cutoff about 40 seconds ago. We saw some of those engines start to go out prior to that point. And so right now we are just standing by to try and get the latest word on where we are with ships. So stick with us for just a couple of minutes as we wait to hear some updates.
Now, if you just recently joined us, you might want to hit rewind and go back about 9-10 minutes ago to when Starship lifted off from the launch tower that you see there. We had a gorgeous ascent followed by a stage separation where the ship separated from the super heavy booster. The booster performed a flip maneuver and returned back to the Gulf Coast here. There you can see it on your screen. Obviously a successful catch back at the launch tower, which is something that we were all hoping to see and really couldn't ask for a more beautiful background with those blue skies and blue water there. As Dan said, we are standing by for an update on the ship that had ignited its engines and started making its way up to space. So standing by for more info on that. But wow, what an experience to see that take off and for that booster to come back. You can see it there up close on your screen to the place that it launched from. Once again, there were thousands of catch commit criteria, which is basically just all the things that we have to assess and evaluate and basically make sure that they are make sure that everything is clear and acceptable conditions, both on the vehicle side as well as the tower side, in order to enable that catch. So obviously from the last two flights that we have done, where the Flight 6 we attempted but had to divert into the ocean, and then on Flight 5 we did have the first ever successful catch of the booster. We used the learnings of those two flights to hone in that catch commit criteria, and we saw success today, which is pretty awesome.
And just a quick status check. So we currently do not have comms with the ship. So trying to figure out exactly when that happened and exactly what happened. So obviously the flight controllers right now going through their data, looking to make sure it's not anything instrumentation on the ship, but actually try and get us a status. So again, we're gonna keep listening in on this. We'll give you an update as soon as we have a little bit more. So for now, stage 1 back in the tower, waiting to find out a little bit more about stage 2. All right. So if you are just tuning in, we caught a booster, but we are still waiting to find out a little bit more on the ship. So it had successfully separated. We did that hot staging maneuver. We did see all 6 of ship's engines on the way uphill during its ascent. But as we were getting to the end of that ascent burn, we saw engines dropping out on telemetry, and we have since lost contact with the ship. So again, we're still listening in on the loops, trying to figure out how much we can get right now. But again, stick with us. We'll bring you updates as soon as we hear them. Really exciting. We were able to catch the booster today. Obviously, we want to get the ship all the way over to the Indian Ocean. May not be able to do that at this point, but we'll give you some updates as soon as we hear a little bit more about the ship.
For those that didn't catch earlier, this was a new version of the ship. This was its debut flight. So a lot of learnings here for sure as we continue to tune in and listen in with the teams and try to gather more information to understand where we stand with the ship. But as Dan mentioned before, teams are trying to make sure that it's not an instrumentation error. We want to find out if it's, did we just lose communication, or did something else happen with the ship? So teams are actively working, trying to figure out what we can find out, and we're continuing to listen in and find out more information to share as we can. But as we said before, and you can see it there on your screen, what a beautiful, beautiful sight to see another booster back at the launch tower. That was successfully caught just minutes ago after sending the ship off into space, and having seen it for the first time with my own eyeballs in person, it was pretty awesome. And yeah, the thunder-like sonic boom was really fun to experience.
Yeah. So we are getting a little bit more. So we did lose all communications with the ship. So I mean, that is essentially telling us that we had an anomaly with that upper stage. So we're just coming up to the end of that ascent burn for the ship. when we stopped when we started to lose a couple of the engines, we saw those dropping out, and then we did lose telemetry from the ship. So that means we didn't have contact with it. So at this point, we are assuming that the ship has been lost. So this was a brand new vehicle, essentially. This was kind of an upgrade version. So with that, there's a lot of things you're upgrading, but there's a lot of things you're going to learn as all of those systems are now interacting with each other for the first time. But at this point, we did lose the upper stage of the ship. So again, we're gonna listen in and try and figure out a little bit more about what happened. And obviously, we'll do kind of a full breakdown once we get smarter ourselves in the coming hours and days as well.
For sure. Now, for those that have recently tuned in, we're now a little over T plus 16 and a half minutes after liftoff. We do believe that we have lost the ship during its ascent phase. It's successfully separated from the Super Heavy booster, but during that ascent phase, a couple of the engines dropped out, and then shortly thereafter, we lost communication with the vehicle. So we are assuming that we have lost the ship, but we are standing by to confirm that, and once we can, we will. But this was a new version of the ship, of Starship, and it was intentionally designed and flown in order to basically test the envelope, as we have done with every one of these test flights, the keyword there being test, and really trying to understand the boundaries and the maximums for the ability of this vehicle to fly and understand where those boundaries are. So we always knew that excitement is guaranteed today, success not guaranteed. And so yeah, we are standing by to see if we can learn more about the status of the ship. Thanks everyone for continuing to stick around as we were checking in on the status of the ship. At this point in time, we can confirm that we did lose the ship. However, Starship, the total vehicle, did have an on-time liftoff at 4:37 p.m. Central Time from the launch pad just behind us at Starbase Texas. Gorgeous ascent and successful stage separation. The booster pushed the ship off, and the ship disconnected during that stage separation. The booster came back for a successful, the second ever booster catch at the launch tower, which was pretty incredible to see.
Yeah, it was great to see the booster come down, but we are obviously bummed out about ship. It looked like we lost contact with it a little under 8.5 minutes into flight. That's roughly when you start to get to that main engine cutoff. We obviously need to go through all the data. It's going to take some time. In the next hours, days, we're going to figure out exactly what happened, come back, fly the next one, get even farther. Reminder, it's a test. It's a flight test. It's an experimental vehicle. So we'll figure out what ended our day today and make sure it doesn't end our day tomorrow. So as we do that, we're going to continue to provide you updates on our X account on SpaceX.com. So just continue to tune in there. As we learn what happened, we'll be ready to share it.
Exactly. So for now, we are going to wrap up our webcast. We'd like to thank the folks in the county for supporting the launch, as well as the agencies that enable us to launch, and of course to our viewers for tuning in.
And thank you, Kate, for coming down, doing this with me. It was great to have you here.
I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us. We'll see you guys at the next Starship flight test.